The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Pros, just because something on the job runs out doesn't mean you have to. Order it on the Lowe's app. My Lowe's Pro Rewards members get free same-day delivery on eligible orders over $25. Get the fasteners, hardware, or tools you need to keep the job moving. Order by 2 p.m. and get eligible in-stock items delivered right to your job site by 8 p.m. Members get more at Lowe's. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Subject to availability. Restrictions and terms at lowes.com/shipping terms. Subject to change.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, host of the Live Like Eden podcast. What do you do when your whole life flips upside down? Are you questioning everything, lost in chaos, or yearning for life's deeper meaning? I've been there, deep in the thick of it, unraveling my own awakening mess for over 20 years. Now I'm here to help you through yours. I share no-nonsense weekly wake-ups, cutting through the ego's illusions to wake you up to your own spiritual wisdom. No mountaintop bliss needed here. Just practical tools, insights, and real life experience to save you time. Plus, a much needed laugh when we're all losing it. Let's dive into this fresh new episode. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're having a fabulous day wherever you are listening. I watched a movie over the weekend, and I watched it on Apple. If anybody has Apple and you want to watch it, it was called Eternity. And it's a movie about the afterlife, or what is possible in the afterlife. And it was a very lighthearted kind of comedy show. So anybody who likes that kind of thing, it's a feel-good movie, you know. But in this movie, they portray the afterlife in an interesting way. The main character is a woman, and she dies, obviously, right? We're talking about the afterlife. So she dies and goes to this place in the movie that is called the Junction. It's kind of like a train station for those of you that haven't seen it. And she arrives at this junction and she gets a guide, and everybody that's died reports to this place, and they have some sort of a spiritual guide that's going to inform them of what the next steps are in the afterlife. And it was kind of funny. But anyway, she's there and her guide is telling her that you have exactly 1 week to decide how you're going to spend eternity. Can you imagine? You got 1 week to figure out how I'm going to spend the rest of my existence. And she's deciding if she's going to spend it with her first husband, whom she was only married to for a very short time, and he died in the war. And then she got remarried to her husband of 65 years, who she had kids and grandchildren and the whole deal. So she's torn because she lost her first husband out of nowhere, and they didn't get to spend the life that they envisioned together. Or does she spend it with her husband, whom she knows very well, in eternity? Or, and I'm thinking to myself, does she just run the other direction and do something on her own? But the rules that were presented in this movie were that if you choose an eternity, you only get one chance to choose your eternity. And if you choose poorly and you don't like it, and you decide to come back to the Junction area, which is kind of like this train station, they like sleep in hotel rooms. I mean, it looked like human existence on the earth. That's what it looks like. If you choose to come back and you break all the rules, right? I don't know who's setting up the rules. They don't really say. I'm assuming it's God. If you break the rules, the eternity cops come and drag you and toss you into the void. And the void in the movie is total blackness. It's infinite isolation and aloneness. No one ever wants to enter this place. And they make it look like this fearful, hellish space. Everyone's screaming, "Don't toss me into the void." It looks like we don't want to go there. You want to spend eternity with your loved ones, someone you love, in the mountains forever, or on a beach location. It's all very human, the experience in the afterlife. So I thought it was really interesting that they were portraying the void as like a hellish existence. It was being portrayed as something you don't want. You never want to go there because that's the removal of everything. And I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. Isn't that like our identity talking, right? The self that we're so rooted in, the ego mind just going, don't go down the rabbit hole of darkness, right? So let's flip the script today. And I thought it would be fun to just talk about this concept of the void. We've heard about it. If you've heard about it through certain religious tradition, Buddhist, Hindus talk about this. I've come across a modern contemplative who's no longer living who spoke of this. And it's also inferred in A Course in Miracles. And I want to talk about the ego's view of the afterlife in this movie, but also how it weaves itself into how we think of the afterlife, or at least many people think of heaven, right? How is the ego slipping in there? And then we'll get into the ego's view of the void, right? Because in the movie, they're showing you that, hey, you don't want to do this. It's an eternal damnation. You want to get the hell out of there immediately. Just suck it up and spend eternity doing what you think is the best, And you only get 1 week to decide that. And then after that, I want to talk about the possibilities of the void. Like, what could this be? And I don't want to present this in a way that's like, this is what the void is. This is more of a show to make you think and open your mind to what's possible. What could the void represent? If you've never had an experience of it, it might be nice to hear the different possibilities as preparation. Because as A Course in Miracles explains, and I'll read a quote from it later, that if we're not prepared for what that means, then all hell breaks loose for us, right? And I think that's what the movie was portraying, was that, nope, you don't want to go to the void because you're not ready for the void. And not only that, you don't want to be ready for the void. That was sort of the message that I was getting from the movie. If you've seen it, maybe you got a different interpretation, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the movie. It was kind of a cute, fun flick for those of you that are interested in something a little light. And now I'm going to take it and turn it into something very deep. So using this movie, the interpretation of the afterlife was centered on the self, right? It was very much centered on the identity that you get to pick your own personal eternity, right? It wasn't necessarily like, hey, here's eternity over here that you're going to have to figure out how to get yourself toward. It was really about the ego's, how am I going to live my best life forever? And that sounds amazing, right? It's like, what would you do if you could choose your own afterlife? And who knows, right? We're all not there, so I have no idea. I hear stories about people who've had near-death experiences, and everybody has a different experience. And then the question becomes, well, those people came back here, so how do we know how far the afterlife extends? You're getting somebody's snippet of information beyond this reality. But how do we know that that reality isn't another part of what I like to call the dream a lot, right? That we're living in some sort of dreamy existence. And if we go into the afterlife thinking that we're going to create more for our personal self, then wouldn't it be possible that anybody could create whatever they wanted? I mean, that's kind of what the show is implying, that you got to choose. It's kind of what the movie was implying, that we have a personal choice how we want to spend eternity. I always wonder if that's true. Let's say that really happens. Like you pass on from your body here, you go to the afterlife, and you're choosing or creating a new existence in a different form or another dimension or in heaven, whatever terms we want to use, but you're choosing it. Now, it seems to me that that's still the ego's interpretation, or the identity or the self-consciousness that we have. That's still us doing what we think we want to do. And then you can ask another question with this: is that really death? Your physical body died, but your existence is still going on still in the afterlife as a separate identity, a separate self-consciousness, a separate self that's reflecting back on something, right? It's saying, oh, I'm me, I'm here. Now I'm in another dimension, and I'm still projecting what appears to be an afterlife where I'm still seeing form. I've heard people who have passed on that say, yes, they see their loved ones, so they're seeing an image of some kind. I don't know if it's in human form. I'm not exactly sure. But people say they see separation. If they're able to identify individuals and separate people or things, then it's still like the projector is still external, correct? Like a projection outside of oneself. And it's clear from the movie, and we can think about this in general, that when we see separate souls, We're keeping our preferences in place. We're attaching to memories still. We're still yearning to hold on to everything that we believe. This huge belief system and structure that we're falling on is still in place. And when I was watching this, it was almost like death didn't really do anything because they were still living the same existence, just in another dimensional reality, it seemed. There was no dissolving of a me or anything. It was just seemed like an upgrade, and you got to customize the theme park, you know? Which to me is still, aren't we still doing the same thing, just in another reality? And they're still eating, they're still drinking, they're still sleeping together. There's still everything. Everything's still the same. And the experience is still happening. I don't know what your personal beliefs are, but how do you envision the afterlife? If you come from a religious background, the idea of heaven is very, very strong in many of us, that there's a place that we go and our souls go to enjoy eternity in God's heaven. And we see our family and our loved ones, and everything is amazing. And that seems like it would be great. But it also seems like, but what is the point of having a physical world full of form, creating all these relationships and interacting with so many different people over your lifetime? And then the body just dies, and then you're resurrecting, right? Or you're rising up or ascending into God's kingdom as that same identity as a soul to play in heaven forever and still be with everybody that you were with on earth. I don't know. I'm just saying out loud, like, what would be the point of doing the physical world if we can just do it in heaven, if it's just there anyway, and we're all still doing the same thing? And this is what the movie was showing. It was kind of like, hey, you know, you're still living your life. You're just now in a new realm, but you're doing the same thing over and over and over. And I can't help but think that that's just the ego's dream, that even in the afterlife, there's still a potential for the dream. We're still dreaming. It's like a dream within a dream within a dream. And I am going to do a show on the dreamer of the dream in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned. The movie also made it look like in the afterlife that we're still run by our emotions, that the whole feeling self is guiding the entire experience. That you're going through an array of emotion. You're still laughing and crying, and all of those things are still there. And you would think in the afterlife, we've done enough of the emotional baggage, right? Being run over by emotions constantly. You think we could ease up a little bit in the afterlife. Maybe there's an ease of falling prey to the emotions that can grab a hold of us so easily. So is this the ego's afterlife? You know, I don't know. It just seems like it's the same kind of thing, just in a different reality or a different dimension, but we're still projecting. And that's what the movie was showing. Everything was still literally a projecting. In fact, before she chose her eternity, she got to sit and watch her life. On the screen, she was just watching her life. She was looking at her time with her first husband. She was watching the movie of her life with her second husband. And maybe they were trying to show us in the movie that that's what we're doing here. We are literally just putting ourselves on a movie screen and creating a story. And we all have our own unique story, don't we? And there was this subtle underlying fear throughout the film, right? And that's the ego's view of the void. Let's get into that for a second. That this void that was sort of in there. And it was funny because they'd be in the junction. There's all these souls, you know, just wandering around. And all of a sudden you'd hear somebody screaming, and the eternity police, you know, would be like handcuffing them on the ground and getting ready to toss them into this nothingness, you know. So there was always this hidden fear going on that people were like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want them chasing me. So I better choose correctly. And maybe I should just stick around and work at the junction until I really know what I want to do, or I wait for somebody that I want to spend my eternity with. And the word the void, it brings up a certain sense of fear in all of us, right? Because it's kind of this idea of evil, or it's the ultimate punishment that God is giving us, or the ego really sees this as an annihilation. The complete undoing of the self, you no longer exist. This is incredibly scary, right? You don't get to live with anybody else. You have nothing to look at, no scenery, no stimulation or distraction of any kind, nothing to put your attention on because there is no more attention. There's no more awareness. And it's an infinite darkness. And because all of us relate so strongly to our identity, we have a huge attachment to ourselves without even knowing it. And we usually don't know that this is a thing. Like we usually don't know how attached we are to ourselves until we feel the identity slipping away from us. Until it starts to crumble or move a little bit, it's almost like the mind senses, uh-oh, something is changing. Something is different and I don't like it. That's what happens, right? If you've ever had a moment in your life where suddenly things were different or you felt yourself dissolving in a way that you couldn't make sense of, but you knew it was leaving you. It's scary, right? What do you want to do? You want to cling to every part of that self that you can to prevent it from leaving you. That's the reaction of our ego mind. Our identity is so strong. It's so strongly rooted within us. We almost share this on a very deep universal or collective level. So much so that you hear very little discussion about the void or its potential, or if it's real. We hear very little discussion, even in spiritual communities or circles, about the dissolution of the self that we believe we are. There's very little discussion on it. In fact, there's more discussion on, well, don't worry about it because you just continue creating in consciousness on the other side. So with that viewpoint, yeah, well, what's to fear? I'm just going to go continue to create and create and create. Isn't that what creation is? Isn't that what this whole world is? It's God's creation or consciousness constantly projecting and creating something outside of itself all the time. That's what we're doing here. So we can understand that there's a very deep collective, not just an individual, but a very deep universal collective response to this. Like we don't want to hear it, right? It's almost like we recoil, like, oh, let's not talk about that. It immediately brings up fear and panic and all the things that we don't want to experience, nor do we want to understand what they mean. The panic comes up because the ego interprets all of this. It interprets its loss of self or its loss of a boundary as the end to everything. It sees it as an end to existence itself. So in the movie, the whole void is portrayed like a bad situation. None of us should ever enter it. And in life, it's also presented that way, at least in the mainstream. In the mainstream of human potential, of the mainstream of religion, in the mainstream of spirituality, it's not really discussed as a place that we should go, right? Why would our identity want to do that? Because we're trying to preserve ourselves at all costs. And even in the afterlife, we're constantly trying to preserve the self. But let's flip this whole fear-mongering campaign of the continuing to create and create and create as if doing anything outside of that would be terrifying. Let's flip it on its head and look at the possibilities that the void could represent. Before I do that, I want to ask, have you ever experienced a moment in your life where everything felt as if it would be erased in one moment? Have you ever had a glimpse or a moment where it was just total blackness or darkness and nothing? And what did it feel like if that happened? Where did your mind go during and after this experience, or I should say maybe no experience? Maybe it wasn't an experience at all. Maybe it was beyond an experience. It was a moment or a fleeting moment where it was like, what was that? And you had no idea. What did you feel? What did it feel like? Does it stay with you today? Have you entered it again? Does it continue to happen? I had a long period of time where I felt as if my self that I didn't even know was so strong. I had no idea that I was attached to an identity in such a way. I had no idea until I felt as if it was leaving me. And it's something so beyond words. It's only something that I could feel. I couldn't make sense of it in my mind. I couldn't think of it in any way. It was just a feeling that was happening experientially within me. And again, it was deep within. It wasn't like you could look at me and go, oh, her self is leaving. You can't see it. You're feeling this place deep within you that you used to fall and reflect back on, feel as if it is leaving you permanently, like it's being erased from time itself. And in that, occasionally I would go into a complete black void. And it felt like everything ceased to exist in that space. I no longer existed. Nothing was there. Just total blackness, like a gap in the reality that I knew. And this, again, was all happening inside of me. I could open my eyes and I could see I was in my bedroom or I was in the kitchen. Everything was still there. But in that inner feeling of nothingness, it was as if nothing was there. And it terrified me at the time because I had no idea what was happening. I had no preparation. I had no knowledge of what any of that was. So at the time, I was in this space having a lot of fear, a lot of very latent, subconscious fear that I could not explain. And the point of this show is to talk a little deeper about the potential or the possibility of the void, to prepare anyone listening who is interested in the topic or is looking deeper beyond the spiritual path that we hear out in the public. If we're really to return to the oneness and the totality or the truth, whatever words you want to put on it, then what will actually happen in order for us to return to that knowing? And I feel like that this discussion is missing in mainstream religion, spirituality, whatever you want to call it. It's something people don't want to talk about. And I get it. I totally get why. It's scary. But the question is, does it have to be? Do we need to actually look at this fear that's sitting there in order to understand it and then better prepare ourselves for our own return to God, our return home?
With Sam's Club, you have the freedom to shop your own way. Curbside pickup, delivered to your doorstep, come in and grab it yourself. Yes, yes, yes. They've got plenty of options. Your call. Say yes to shopping the way you want. Join now at samsclub.com/yes and. You must be 18 years or older to purchase a membership, and membership is subject to qualifications. Visit samsclub.com/yes and for details.
Did you know your hair ages just like your skin does? The new Chronologies line offers luxurious youth revitalizing care for aging hair. It reverses the 5 key signs of hair aging: lack of thickness and volume, dullness, dryness, and frizz in just one night. Use the full range of Chronologies shampoo, mask, and overnight serum and wake up to visibly fuller, smoother, healthier hair. Shop the new Chronologies line at Kerastase.com.
Are you stuck staring at your W-2? Are tax refund worries holding you back? You probably have FOMO, the fear of messing up. The fix? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve, or your money back. It's time to overcome your fear of messing up and get your taxes done right. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
So instead of this void being seen as a horrible, horrific place of self-annihilation, because it's kind of bluntly stating that's what it will feel like to the ego's identity, right? Let's just be real. The ego, of course, is going to see it that way because it doesn't have anything beyond itself. Could this place of darkness, the void, this gap, if you will, could it be a place of serious transformation? Could it be the most liberating place to enter within ourselves? Could it shift everything about what we believed to be true and show us that there's a lot more than what our eyes see? There are ancient viewpoints on this. The Buddhists, they have a viewpoint on the void. To them, it's like a dynamic openness full of interdependent aliveness and potential. It's kind of their paradox, right? They have this whole emptying feeling, but then this feeling of something greater. So the Buddhists believe this, they teach this. This is their interpretation, right, of returning to oneness, or whatever the terms that the Buddhists use. The Hindus do the same thing. They also see the totality as a formless gateway. And this gateway that dissolves into Brahman, right? Brahman is God. And it takes you to full conscious awareness, God consciousness, or, beyond the world, outside of the self. Even yoga, different yoga traditions talk about the void. Tantric yoga says the void is a creative still point, which is the womb of manifestation. So it's almost as if in the void of nothingness or blackness or nothing, is there a point where there's something beyond awareness? Is it taking us to something greater? Is the void the actual gateway to God instead of running around in circles creating more form? And is this void the place we all should enter, right? To return to truth, to return to what's real. A Course in Miracles in the very beginning of the text brings up a very interesting point. And I'm going to read it for you because it makes you wonder what the rest of the text is saying. As I've mentioned many times, A Course in Miracles is over 600 pages in text. And its whole book is preparing us to look at the ego, see it for what it is, understand what's going on in the mind, right? So that we can choose the Holy Spirit and listen to the Holy Spirit to guide us back home, to God, to reality, where the truth really is, not in the world, not in the universe, not in the world that we see, not this world of form. So actually in the very first chapter of A Course in Miracles, in section 7, called Distortions of Miracle Impulses, there's a line in verse 5, and it says this: a solid foundation is necessary because of the confusion between fear and awe, to which I have already referred and which is often made. Isn't that interesting? That there's a confusion between fear and awe, meaning something so amazing, right? Something beautiful, something magnificent is what I think of when I hear the word awe. There's a confusion. And what would be confused? Well, the ego, right? The ego would confuse something amazing and make it horrible, right? Later on down in this verse, it says this: it would be unwise to start on these steps without careful preparation, or awe will be confused with fear, and the experience will be more traumatic than beatific. Healing is of God in the end. The means are being carefully explained to you. Revelation may occasionally reveal the end to you, but to reach it, the means are needed. So the whole point of that is saying, hey, you got to be prepared for what's coming, people. And too bad, where is the preparation for any of this in today's spirituality? Does religion prepare us for the void? Is anything preparing us for that, really? I mean, there are a few ancient traditions that do. But on the grand scale of what we see in the world, everything is pointing us to continue identifying as a separate being, right? Now, I'm not saying stop living your life in the world. Don't do anything and just sit and be. That is not what I'm talking about. But on a deeper level of understanding, why do you think there's no discussion on this? Plenty of people have lived in this reality throughout the history of the world, which is apparently very long. Lots of beings have come here. And do we really believe that only a few people got it? Like only Jesus, only Buddha, Krishna, all the great male masters. They're the only ones that figured it out? No way, right? There's probably been so many people who've been here and understood what this was. We just don't hear from them. And the world is afraid of that message. It's really afraid of that message because it's totally opposite of everything we hear. Completely opposite. Nobody wants to hear that. Very few people are really wanting to hear that, experience that, know that. It's beyond our comprehension. Some people I've even heard say, well, to question the universe would just be absurd. I can't help but laugh. Like, I can't ask a question about it. Like, what if this isn't it? Does anybody else think this? Like, what are they talking about? Maybe this isn't really what's going on here. And this movie that I watched, Eternity, kind of made me think a little more about it, right? Like, why are they making it look like the void sucks so bad? Maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it's our own ego mind's misinterpretation of what that is. And maybe when it happens, we jump back into form so fast because it's terrifying. But with a little understanding, finding some information out there, like A Course in Miracles explains it. And then I want to share with you this other book that I have. I've mentioned this woman many times on the show. Her name is Bernadette Roberts. She is no longer living, but she was a modern contemplative, okay? And she just died like, I want to say at least 10 years ago, maybe a little longer. She wrote a book called What is Self? She herself had a fascinating experience of what she calls the no self experience, and even takes it to the point of saying eventually there is no experience to have. And she writes very detailed, and it's almost a difficult read, to be honest, but it's very well worth it for those of you that are interested in looking a little deeper at this. She does mention in this book, she was Catholic. I want to give her a little background first. She was Catholic. She was actually in a convent as a nun, as a very young woman. And she spent a lot of time in contemplation, in the unitive state, finding union with God or the divine. And then later on in her life, the unitive state left her. It was like the divine left. And so she was putting this into words, and it's really fascinating. But anyway, she says in this chapter, it's on page 64 in Appendix 1, it's called The Divine Experienced by Consciousness. Bernadette hints in her book that the void of voids is experienced by the Christ awareness of all of us. Like, she wasn't really saying that Jesus, the man, was God. She was saying it's the other way around. He was recognizing the Christ that each one of us is destined to experience. But then there's a dissension into what she puts in quotes as hell, or the void of voids. And it's a gap between human consciousness or self and the divine. And here she states, it is not a different level of consciousness or any psychic state. Rather, it is a different dimension of existence, one that cannot be described because it cannot be grasped by consciousness or its intellect. I thought that was interesting because she's basically hinting that there's something beyond consciousness. Is God beyond consciousness? Because so much of what's out there today is we are consciousness, and therefore we stay in this conscious universal field of awareness, and there's nothing more than that. Well, how do we know that? Yeah, we're having a conscious experience here. Absolutely. That is definitely happening. The question is there more to the story? Or should I say, is there more beyond the story? No more stories? I want to read you one more paragraph. And this is in part 3. It's chapter 1. It's called An Overview, and it's in a section called The Fine Line Between Two Dimensions. And this is what she states. By fine line, I mean the unexpected confrontation with the immediate experiential possibility of all awareness permanently falling away. It is the fine line between self and no self. At this point, we do not see how life could continue in such an event. After all, if we, the self, are not aware of God and our surroundings, then what is? It is not a matter of personal self-awareness falling away, of which there is little left anyway, but of all awareness falling away. The impression is that this could only mean death. Self, which is consciousness or awareness, is obviously incapable of imagining its non-existence or imagining how life would go on without itself. The overriding mystery, however, is how without awareness there could be any awareness of the divine or heaven. In death, we may not miss the world, but we do not want to miss the divine. The fine line, then, is the awareness of an unusual kind of death, one that is not physical and not even spiritual. Instead, it is the death of awareness itself, awareness not merely of self, but equally awareness of God. What she's saying here, because it's very well written, right? I mean, listen to this verbiage. But I think what she's saying is that without a self-awareness to fall back on, there no longer is an awareness of the divine. There's no longer an awareness of any of it until you return to the Godhead, until you join with the totality. And all there is God. And what she's saying in that is there's no consciousness. There's no awareness. There's nothing to observe or look at. It's simply a state we cannot possibly comprehend. That's what she's getting at. And when she says that the whole point or the fine line is the awareness completely falling away, no awareness, that sends fear in the ego's mind, right? It does. It sends a big fear in the ego's mind. But what if beyond this reflecting back on something or myself or an awareness of something other than just what I feel within, what if it's more amazing than what we're doing here? What if it's so magnificent that it's the only existence that we really truly want and that we're really truly missing? So this void that the movie Eternity paints as a horrible place, don't go there, can only be interpreted by an ego mind that wants to continue creating individual specialness, right? And individuality and eternal planning. You guys get tired of planning? What am I going to do tomorrow? What are we doing next week? What trips are we going to take this summer? How much money do we need to do that? Blah, 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 right? It seems like we're constantly just projecting and moving outward instead of stopping for a moment, taking a deep breath, closing our eyes, and seeing this vast void that really is sitting right with us. It's not somewhere we go. It's somewhere we realize and recognize within. It's that gateway that could potentially be taking us to something beautiful, something far beyond what our little minds can comprehend. I like sharing this information just because I don't hear it anywhere. I don't hear a lot of it. I mean, there are people who do ponder this, but in order to really wake up, I mean, if that's what we're talking about here, if this is what awakening really means, if this is what journeying back to God really means, is eventually there's going to be a falling away of awareness, a falling away of observation, a falling away of consciousness. And some people may say that's absurd. And everyone has the right to believe and think as they please, right? We're all where we are. Some of us are still loving to play in the playground. We're totally into it. And you can, right? Why not? Why not enjoy the playground while you're in it? But can you play in the playground and still on a deeper level start going, there must be more. I know there's more. And is the access point literally at my fingertips? Is it right here within me? Do I really need to go searching anywhere? Do I need to keep reading more books? Or do I just need to sit and empty my mind and connect and see when the void presents itself? But if I create the space, if I create the time to just sit and be every now and then, right? Or is it possible that sometimes the void comes finding you without your consent, right? But maybe on a much deeper level, you did consent. You did wish to experience this void and vastness. And people say it's blackness and darkness and aloneness, but maybe there's more to it than the ego's interpretation of it. The ego sees it as a nightmare because it's its own annihilation. But without the ego, what is there? Without the connection and the attachment to awareness, what is there? Is it God? Is it love? Is it beyond anything we can imagine right now? I will leave that for you. You can check out Eternity, pop some popcorn and tune in for a couple hours. It's fun, a little lightness. You'll see what I'm talking about if you haven't seen it. It's just kind of this subtle hint that do not go to the void. All right, that's enough for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I always love hearing from you guys. I'd love your take on the void. I'd love your take on any of the episodes, what you're going through personally on your own path, your own interpretation. I love to think that the more of us that can come together and have these discussions, it's preparation for what's possible and it can help other people. So I hope you all have a really wonderful week. Enjoy whatever you're doing, and I will be back with you next Wednesday. That's it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. If it resonated, please share, follow, and drop a review with your takeaways. It really means a lot. Visit my website at livelikeeden.com to subscribe for weekly reminders and blogs, or sign up for a free 30-minute consult to explore one-on-one guidance sessions if you're really struggling in Awakening's darkness. Take my Awakening quiz to get a personal podcast playlist that meets you exactly where you're at. See you next week for another deep dive.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
I'm Suzanne Giesman, and if you've ever wondered about life after death, or if it's possible to connect with higher consciousness, I invite you to join me for my podcast, Always Connected. It's my mission to share with you that a connection with loved ones who have passed and divine guidance is always available, and we are so very loved. I want to teach you how to live a consciously connected and divinely guided life. Listen here on the mindbodyspirit.fm podcast network.